taken away by G2, the Rek'Sai being respected by PSG with the Orianna. So clearly, PSG learning from what we saw against T1, taking away some of the power picks that G2 demonstrated against Faker and the rest of T1.
Wonder if the Zac will follow as well. I think Broken Blade has been insanely impressive on that pick. Also allows G2 to lane swap. I think we did see that even in the T1 series, they didn't come out as often as we maybe expected, but G2 still having a very good understanding of particularly the continued lane swaps, where they keep swapping against you. PSG struggled a little bit more in that regard, as the Kalista going to be picked up here, one of the most popular B1 picks that we've seen.
Yeah, a lot of Kalista priority so far at this MSI. I don't think we've seen Kalista really pop off to the degree that perhaps we expected. There's also a mix between a lot of the AD carries from the LCS and the LEC are actually building on-hit Kalista with the lethal tempo, whereas the Eastern, especially the LCK AD carries, like that opportunity, Yumu's lethality Kalista a little bit more.
Also ties into the playstyle. Even the game where Paze went at like a ridiculous KDA, who didn't feel like he was the one taking over the game, was much more about the setup on the rest of the Rift. As I love Jarvan, and I loved Jarvan Poppy as a combo, particularly into an immobile AD carry. Ton of power right from the get-go.
I mean, the beauty of this Poppy is they can keep it as a flex as well. PSG, we'll see how they respond. Will they lock in their support? I mean, Kasante's now going to move much lower on the priority. We've seen from European teams specifically how effective Poppy can be into the Kasante, and you'll have to imagine that that's going to be shifted away from. Now, Maple, we know how confident he is on the Azir, on the Talia. He's going to lock that one in, Talia Vivarus. When you would look at this draft from PSG, this is about as meta as you can get. Yeah. Power picks across the board, but G2, they've come in with a plan, and they're looking ready.
Do like the combination of the Talia and Vi. No matter what, Talia really benefits from the point-and-click CC. And then additionally, Talia into Kalista is always going to feel great. Again, unless the Kalista opts into lethality, where it's not nearly as much as a problem, as you won't be hopping around. Obvious downside is that you are still playing into a Poppy.
I think the Aurelion Sol should be another consideration for PSG. We haven't seen it a lot from Caps, but for those that don't know, Caps was an early adopter of the champion, one of his debut performances back in Challenger Series, before he even made it to the main stage of LEC. He secured a pentakill on the champion, on the old version of it, and since its changes, he has been an early adopter of it here in the LEC. We've seen how effective it can be in the hands of certain players at this tournament, and I feel like PSG should consider respecting it as G2 take the Rumble off the board. We know that Aja, very proficient Rumble player. Even in the lane swaps, it was he who found advantages still and a way to impact the map, even though he was at massive deficits.
And support Rumble still a possibility as well, although I do prefer Woody on engage. I think that is where a lot of PSG's impetus comes in the mid-game. You already have the Vi, you have the point-and-click CC from the Cease and Desist into Chain of Corruption to Seismic Shove, so maybe you don't need as much CC here for PSG. They'll get rid of the LeBlanc, which opens up G2, as Vedi said, to the Aurelion Sol, which pairs up very nicely with the Cataclysm.
One of the things PSG could look towards is the Renata, a pick that we have already seen Woody play, and I think Renata into these type of short-range compositions could get a ton of value. Obvious downside is that you picking up, there you go, G2 drawing the same conclusion, because can pick up a blind top laner here if they wanted to, and then save that counter pick for support for R5. Nautilus, though, it's exactly what you were saying earlier, Medic. It provides additional lockdown. Double point and click is always going to be very strong into champions like the Kalista, and Nautilus just always feels like a very consistent support pick.
Champion we've seen consistently banned. PSG are just getting power picks across the boards. I feel like PSG should be very happy with the direction they're going. They're taking their time, thinking about what they want to do moving into their final pick. Aja going to be getting that counter. How will he round things out as G2 will cement whether this Poppy is likely to go top or if it's staying in support?
Yeah, if I'm PSG, I'm probably a little bit worried about a Braum here. Braum good into Nautilus in the lane, good against the Vi as well, because as she jumps onto the backline, the Braum just dashes in front and puts up the Unbreakable, making it a lot harder for the follow-up to come from the rest of the team. Instead, the Poppy is going to go to support. Zac in the top lane for Broken Blade. He had a couple of exceptional performances on it against T1, so just giving a bit of comfort to BB in the top lane, who, in my opinion, has been the best performer for G2 so far at MSI.
It's definitely been one of the strongest performers, that's for sure. Tristana going to be the lock-in for Caps to round things out. We've seen how from Team Liquid yesterday, even when you're over-indexing in AD damage, given that the Zac does provide an element of AP, sometimes in terms of itemization it can be difficult. You want things like the Merc Treads to mitigate some of the utility on the side of G2, but also you want to build those armor boots. The risk that PSG run into is the possibility of a lane swap. That's why you go for the blind pick Zac. They know that they can send it towards a side lane, or they can do those early swaps rather, and Zac can handle that fine. But in the K'Sante matchup, they can also happily take that 2 versus 2 if they're feeling confident. G2 have a lot of control around what they want to do in the early game. We'll see what the ultimate game plan is from both teams.
Broken Blade, been the best performing member on the Zac, I think by a pretty large margin. Also, as you point out, very happy. We've seen a counterpick many times into the K'Sante as well. K'Sante being a tank, always going to struggle a little bit with that W. And as you point out, I also feel like particularly with these Kalista Tristana comms, generally you're going to be looking for these early to mid-game shoves for the push, meaning that if you get into mid-game with a decent lead, the point at which K'Sante is going to take over is going to be a lot slower. I do think that eventually, as you should be able to reach a point where he is going to be a brick wall, but he doesn't have as much space due to the Poppy being in the game as well.
And the risk as well is you're playing into double AD carries. Even if you go lethality on the Kalista, if you have a Kraken Slayer on that Tristana into something like a Lord Dominic's Regards, you will be able to work your way through that frontline tank line a bit easier than if it was a burst mage who can't work their way through that K'Sante as easily. PSG with a much more meta composition, much more standard, the big picks that we expect here. G2 once again throwing up a couple of curveballs, although I say this is relatively standard for them. I do wonder if we'll see them trying to split the map early like they did in the final game against T1, invading through that bot side and trying to get flashes out of the enemy bot lane.
This series is going to be all about confidence. You have to realize that both of these teams pushed oppositions that were expected to be heavy favorites to their absolute limit, and they're going to need to replicate that level of play today. Backs against the wall. Elimination for both PSG and G2. We jump into game 1.
And the weight of their regions on their shoulders.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
G2 will be still feeling the hurt of losing to NRG last year at Worlds. A lot of expectations on their shoulders going into that tournament, and even more, I would say, going into this one for them, especially after their almost victory against T1.
I mean, after people saw the G2, people saw the PSG BLG series and they were like, wow, PSG is scarier than we thought. Then the G2 T1 series happened, they were like, wow, G2 is scarier than we thought. And now you've got these two teams that exceeded expectations in many ways. And for one of their runs to be cut short is very bittersweet, given how they have performed at MSI.
That's kind of MSI for you, though. When you invite the best teams from every region, some good players are going to get knocked out relatively early.
I'm just happy we have double A-Lim.
Yeah.
So it's not just the one series, always leaves us with a bit of a sour taste. It doesn't look like we're going to be getting any lane swaps. Main thing of note for me, Hans Sama, I don't think too surprisingly, you already pointed out Medic. Generally, the Western Kalistas prefer going for the lethal tempo, will be the case here as well. But Betty also going for the unhit Varus, which, given that we were kind of wondering to what extent are they going to be able to deal with the tanks on the opposite side, I think an interesting call. Also means that the Varus kind of changes in what he does, particularly in mid-game fights. On 1 and 2 spikes, does have a lot more power in the extended trades, but into the amount of burst that G2 have available and the guaranteed lockdown of a Jarvan, we'll see how Betty's able to play it, because he was, I think, one of the big standouts in the series against PLG.
For sure. Excited to see Betty return to the Rift. Caps looking to get a nice trade down in the mid lane. Level 2 secured for Mickey and Hans. Nicely positioned there from Betty and Woody, not getting too close to any walls. They remember what happened to the T1 bot lane. They're going to show that respect towards Mickey, who, I mean, we think back to that series, Poppy was definitely his best champion of the series, by far. Bit of pressure.
Halo plays this game, though, Betty.
True, no Halo plays this time round. I think he's expecting more of a slightly less aggressive bot lane 2 versus 2. We keep our eyes on the junglers as well, both doing a clear towards bot side. G2 getting that early information for PSG. But also, notice the early vision invested from PSG in terms of their entrances to the bot side. They were concerned about G2 leveraging their early strength. And we all know about that creative Jarving pathing, right? Where you can do red, EQ over the wall, maybe even invade on the enemy camp. PSG were concerned about that, and so they've tried to mitigate what pressure they can. But right now, it's Caps are pushing mids. Yike, let's see what he can do with this pressure that he has.
And step up towards this blue. Ginger went Wolves into Gromp. Now starting the blue, has popped the Vault Breaker as well. Yike stepping in here, does have the smite, so does Ginger. And you can see the bot lane from G2, the first to react with that push. Ginger should just have to step away from this. Caps as well with push in the mid lane. G2 will steal away this blue.
Exemplary League of Legends, Prio in mid, Prio in bot. And a solid matchup in the 1v1 as well. Yike immediately makes use of that, picks up the blue buff. And that's going to set Junja a little bit behind.
Look at pings right now from both teams. PSG realize they don't have control over the bot side, but Broken Blade with his push in top means that Yike was thinking about an invade, immediately gets pinged out though. Looks like he was spotted. And so he's decided, you know what, I'm not actually going to try and contest that top grab. I think Yike realized he was a little greedy. He was pushing a little bit farther than he should have. And instead, we'll just be happy with the bot grab.
I think there was a window there for Junja to at least force a summoner, though. If you forgo the crab and just run, because Broken Blade didn't get the question just yet, as Betty.
Flash heroic charge, but Mickey doesn't get the stun into the wall. Yike looking for the flank. Betty's popped the ghost, does still have his flash. Mickey burnt both the flash and the ignite in that exchange.
I mean, it's a nice play there from Betty. A little unlucky from Mickey. Not quite close enough to the wall to lock down Betty. If he had, Yike might have even flashed, EQ'd to try and find a kill for G2. Small gold lead in favor of G2 for now. Nothing to write home about, though, as Junja been able to get his back off, will make his way towards his top camps. Those respawns are going to come through, and Yike going to be looking to do the same thing now. We think about early grubs, something that G2 have put a high priority on. I wonder if PSG will try to contest that or instead prioritize early dragons.
Caps with a nice little buffer with the rocket jump out there. I do think early grubs for G2 makes sense, especially with double AD carry. The more time you can have auto-attacking those towers, it gives you just all that extra damage. If you get those 3 early, although you don't get the mites, you are able to take out some turret plates early on in the game.
And obviously with the mites or the grubs, it's always going to feel a little bit less impactful than getting a herald, getting a dragon. But we have actually seen, I think, after the buffs that came through to the grubs, that they do feel a little bit more impactful, and that teams are more happy to contest them, as Broken Blade really wants that proc.
He gets the proc, he gets the plate, and he walks away. No Barmy Cinder on him yet, so it doesn't tank.
Yeah.
We've seen so many people fall foul to that across the course of MSI.
Yeah.
Again, worth keeping an eye on the pings on the minimap. G2 dropping a ping towards the Gromp. Mickey, I don't think he's going to be able to find anything, but they're cautious about Junja hovering around the bot side. It makes sense for Junja to be on this side of the map right now. The bot lane was getting frozen on by Betty and Woody, so they were forced to stick around. They need to push this wave out, and that means that they're at risk of getting ganked. Junja covering is extremely important. Very unlikely for them to threaten a dive. While Maple does have level 6, I think that he doesn't quite have the mana, needs to get a reset off. Still has the TP to get back in, but this arrival in the bot lane opens up the grubs on the top side.
Yeah, you see the immediate pings from G2. Yike runs up there, will be able to secure all 3 of these grubs. Broken Blade's TP back into the lane alongside Azure, so it's going to be an exchange of grubs for the Drake. G2's bottom lane having to respect the fact that Junja was in the area.
There's also the fact that Broken Blade just come off a fresh base. RG's not looking for a back right now, and Maple was behind on the play. Caps had already gotten the priority in mid, so only real option there is to cross map. You do see though, Junja still a little bit behind in farm. The extra experience from the grubs also going to be feeling really nice there for Yike. He should be getting close to 6 soon. There are a ton of great targets.
I think he might get it off the Scuttle Crab. Not quite.
Yep,
oh, there we are.
Yep.
Pings over to level 6, so there's the risk of jumping onto Maple in the mid lane, who's working his way down towards the bottom side. Weaver's Wall, always a threat. Maple can take the shorter route back into this lane. Junja is waiting in the wings. Yike going forward. Seismic shell flash by Maple. Knew he'd be buster shot back towards Yike, and so has to burn that summoner.
Still a good trade. Caps looks a little bit there, and if Junja has 6, maybe there's a punish opportunity, but that's not the case. No ultimate available for him. It's just going to be the ult for flash trade.
And Caps did miss the cannon there. So who's really winning is the question. Flash for cannon.
The question is if you punish the flash. It always is, right? If Maple's able just to stay safe for the next 5 minutes and just continue farming up, then the flash not punished. Flash hook, though, going in. Seismic shot back onto Mickey as he was waiting in the bush, but he was pounced on by PSG. The collapse continues. Maple gets the kill. Who's really winning, Betty? I think it's PSG.
Big thing there was that G2 was sitting on the ward in that brush. They weren't aware of it, and as a result, PSG pick up first blood.
Nice collapse. Good lockdown coming out from PSG as they secure themselves first blood. Not going to do a huge amount in terms of the goal difference, but a small advantage gained for Maple. He's going to buy his boots on boots on his first pack. It's a great.
Look, Betty, it's 6 a.m. in EU. We'll forgive you that one.
My apologies. My apologies.
Keep abreast of the situation at some moments.
Grub's going to be spawning in 2 minutes time, Dragon in about 3 minutes. These are going to be the neutrals that we have to keep our eyes on moving forward. A relatively slow early game as both sides not really looking for that early action, but credit to PSG finding that early kill. Set them up nicely in particular. Let's see if Maple can use that small advantage to start moving around the map.
It's also one of those games where both teams can look at each other and go, oh, we can win late. Right, like we have the tools, we have a lot of front to back, we have a consistent threat in our AD carry, we have good zone control with either the Talia or the Poppy. There's plenty of team fighting power to go around, which in practice, I know from experience, does not necessarily lead to the most interesting games.
But it's also an elimination game, right? Pathmaker back here. Broken Blade tanking up the tower into the all-out. Goes into the cell division. Oh, it's a Barmy stiff again. Azure punishes BB. And he'll get the kill before BB gets back to life.
A massive misplay from Broken Blade. He tries to proxy the wave, but Aji just manages it perfectly. Uses all the CC at his disposal to keep Broken Blade underneath the tower. And he gets another kill for PSG.
Really big win there. The Cassante was one of the win conditions we talked about. If the Zac starts falling behind in his base damages, his level's not as high as they otherwise could be, Aji can just itemize.
Kev's going to flash Belcher shot back here, but it's only underneath the tower. Maple good positioning. Yike was there for the chase. And G2, a couple of...
That was a bit crazy from Caps.
I don't want to call it desperation yet because they're only 2-0 down, but it was a little bit
I would not call it desperation. I think that the play was that Yike was making his way into mid, and so Caps thought I can ulti him back into lane to set up for a combo given that he doesn't have flash. But we look back at this play and notice it. Aja gonna get the knockback, then he brings him back underneath the tower again. That's a third tower shot. Then he keeps him underneath the tower with the ultimate. Perfect chain CC from Aja to secure a solo kill. And just punishes the fact that Broken Blade tries to proxy the wave.
Broken Blade could have just played it a little bit slower. Maybe you lose a minion or two, but you still get the proxy and you don't run the risk of walking in there Q3.
And just really smart to all out away from the wall as well, because often as Cassante you want to pull people through that wall, but it meant that Broken Blade couldn't flash out of tower range and kept him under there for that extra turret shot.
I'll also say the Hollow Radiance pickup is just so massive in the early matchup. When you're playing against double AD carry, obviously he's going to start itemizing a lot more towards armor, but we'll see how things progress. That matchup's going to get a lot harder as now Ginger and the squad looking to contest.
That gets the fourth grub for G2, and I think that's all G2 wanted, really.
Betty's on his way as well.
Betty is on his way across, and with Hans Summon not there, G2 wisely back away. If they take this fight, there'll be a numbers disadvantage. They realize that, so they get their fourth grub, and then they get the hell out of there.
Talked about it a little bit earlier as well. Want to try and deny these 6 grubs, but with Betty also roaming up, is going to be a decent amount of this wave lost, and Hansama picking up a plate. So for PSG, I think you're going to be happy about the fact that you denied that extra pushing power, but we are starting to see that again. G2 now, even despite the kills, relatively closer in terms of gold. I think though that until we're actually going to see an actual team fight, actual 4v4 or 5v5, we're going to have a really good idea of how this game is going to go. Because this game, to me, specifically, is just going down to who has better execution, who's able to keep their backline safe, who has the right call with engaging, because there are a lot of targets that I think are kind of bait. Poppy is a big one, but even things like the Cassante, I feel like at this point we should all know, but we've still seen teams try.
That we have. I wonder if we'll see a fight around this next Drake. G2 will want to stop PSG from stacking up, but Maple with the push in mid. Caps on a reset, has a Noon Quiver. Ginger's going to start up the Dragon. TP's available for both the top laners. Ginger, I don't think he walked over Vision to get here, but Woody and Betty are definitely walking over Vision to step across. G2 definitely second to this. As Betty says, I think it's too late as well. Woody misses the hook. Yike goes in, can't land the smite, secured by Ginger. Mickey dodges away from the Chain of Corruption towards the bottom side, using the movement speed from the Steadfast Presence, and G2 will get out.
Cloud Soul.
Love it. Oh, you LCK cast.
I love it.
I think movement speed is a very powerful thing, don't get me wrong. But PSG playing this other game very well. Very calm, very collected. They're not falling prey to any of the early traps that G2 have been trying to set up. They've been very respectful and they've been rewarded for it. Mickey now maybe in some danger.
Weaver's wall going in. Mickey hooked up first. Face Call will pull him out. Yike on his way, trying to get around to his AD carry and support to defend them. In the end, just the Weaver's wall used in exchange for the Fate's Call.
Not too crazy of a trade there, one way or another. Yike.
Locked up for a second flash as the Vault Breaker needed to. If that had hit, the Seismic Shove would have followed. Caps has spent this time Hammering down that mid lane. It's already taken 2 plates out of it with only 45 seconds remaining before those plates fall off. I don't think we'll see any more falling.
Because of the continuous pressure in the lanes and towards the turrets from G2, they haven't fallen that far behind when it comes to the gold. Do mention, though, or rather, it's dead even. Do think, though, that the double Drake already, particularly when you're sitting in a teamfight position, the luxury to just be like, hey, you don't have to go for a Drake fight, but if PSG find themselves in another situation like here, where they get first move on that third Drake, from that point on for G2, there's going to be a lot less freedom in the decision-making around whether you want to set up for Baron, whether you want to try and trade across the map, because you're kind of going to be forced to contest for that soul.
And PSG were so good around those team fights in the PCS.
Yeah.
It's what really won them the region. So if G2 are forced into outnumbered fights where they're stepping into fog of war, PSG have every tool in their toolkit to punish them with this composition.
Swapping up the lanes now for both sides. The bot lanes have been brought into mid. The Herald is up, and is likely to be the big point of contention. Hans Summer, Blade of the Ruin King completed, same for Betty. Those first core items are being finished. Caps would love to get his as quickly as he can, but going for that, going to delay it a little bit.
I mean, Caps needs 6 minions for the Cull, does have the TP. I wonder if he'll just catch this wave and maybe have enough farm for it. TP in by Azure to stop Caps from being able to do that immediately. PSG now starting up the Rift Herald, and
Broken Blade
G2's
trying to get
positioning.
level 11 in the bot lane. He does have TP, but it looks like they're not going to bother trying to fight this. It's too risky. Overstacking of PSG and their members, and I think they're in a good position to threaten the dive.
G2 trying to react. Woody going in with a Hex Splash. There's the TP all out under the towers. Azure tanks it up. Dash away from the seismic shove. Elastic slingshot in by Broken Blade. Gets hooked. Mickey flashes across the wall, and Hans Summer starts to put the damage down onto Junja. Let's bounce on the back line as Azure falls low, as does Woody. Cataclysm for the follow-up. Season Desist going in as Hans Summer is isolated from the rest of G2. Betty was yeeted away, but 2 kills so far over to G2. Only 1 in response by PSG. The dash back in. Mickey goes forward. Junja falling low, but Betty is raining down arrow after arrow on top of them. Double knock-up. Yike balls. Junja and Betty, Caps dancing on them. Betty goes into the fog of war, though. Junja able to escape for the moment. Betty tries to trade, can't get it. Caps with a double. Junja's going to dash across this wall, but the blast cone from Caps. Will Junja get away? He has the enhanced recall. Caps jumps in, and down goes Junja.
And PSG around the objective. It looked all right, but that dive, G2 was so ready for it. Knew it was coming. And the response is immaculate. It starts with Caps buffer and ends with PSG taking a really rough trade.
Caps playing that very well, very patiently. I'm wondering at what point is he going to use the rocket jump. He waits for the knockback here. Now he's able to create space, buys enough time for the TP to come in. But look at Mickey on the right-hand side of your screen. Locks up Junja, makes the fight on 2 fronts. On the top side, G2 is hard winning with their chain CC and the damage that they have. But Betty and Junja are doing serious work. Really well played from Mickey to try and get Betty out of the fight, but Junja has the damage. Now they think 3 versus 4, we can actually turn this around, and Betty proving exactly again what he did against BLG. His positioning and his damage output was fantastic, but the knockup still comes through from Yike. The damage from Caps is too much, and G2, they end up getting an ace as PSG still find 3.
And it's Caps that knocks it down, but it's Broken Blade and Yike. The amount of bouncy castling that was happening to all the members of PSG, continuous flag and drags, Broken Blade with the flash order there towards the start of the fight to set it all up.
Mickey stepping forward, puts the steadfast presence down. Yike across the wall, a possibility, but with the depth charge, Mickey's just locked up, doesn't get an opportunity to move, and Mickey caught out by PSG.
Massive with the dragon spawning in 15 seconds. PSG have put themselves in a great spot. Weaver's wall.
And Summer on the wrong side of it. Yike trying to join up. Caps in the top lane, does have the TP. Broken Blade's pushing out bot. Rift Herald's going to charge in. That will be the mid-tier 1 falling. PSG take it. The Drake next on the menu for them would be their 3rd of the game.
Agi is top though, and he doesn't have TP, whereas Caps does. But PSG still going to go for this.
Mickey's back up. Caps seen by PSG. They know
Caps
he's in the top
TP.
lane. Now he goes out of vision. Can TP. You can see Azure trying to chase him out, making sure he can't TP away, which means that PSG, when they can't catch out Caps, when they can't stop those reinforcements arriving, have to back away from the Drake.
TP is almost up for Agi though, so PSG can play it slow and try to look for the retake.
I mean, I think the problem for PSG is they've already used their tempo to take that mid tower. They've invested a lot. Remember that Maple also used his ultimate to try and catch Hans Summer off. But PSG, they still want to fight.
First one going in, Fate's call out, Yike flashes forward into the Classic, into the blast cone as PSG scatter to the winds. Caps trying to join up, TP behind as Yike is low. They engage with the Vault Breaker, followed up by Junja. Stretching strike, pulls in two. Yike able to escape, but Azure's now on the back line, and Caps is separated from his team. Azure dancing in. The Cell Division from Broken Blade will buy him another second. Caps dance into the back of the pit. Cell Division going low as Maple will take out Broken Blade. Yike next to fall, and now it's all on Hunt Summer and Caps and Mickey. Junja locked against the wall, but it's two as PSG just outplay G2 in the team fight. They find four, only Caps remains standing, but how long will he stand for? He tries to trade back, and Maple sends him into the dirt. He gets one in exchange.
And just like that, PSG respond with an ace of their own. They find all 5 members while keeping 3 alive. They're going to put themselves at Dragon Soul point 2. PSG with incredible team fighting once again.
Big thing there is that on one end you have a core that's actually pretty good at dealing with a tank, whereas on the other end you have Aji creating so much space. This blast cone, incredible. Junja denies Broken Blade the entry, the Cataclysm doesn't do anything, and here the fight starts splitting up. Because of the amount of tank shredding that's available on this Varus, on the Vi as well, they deal with Broken Blade relatively easily. Aji though, he's not threatened at all. Caps tried to join the top half of the fight, wasn't actually able to, and at this point, PSG have a numbers advantage, able to close it out and set up for that soul point that we were talking about earlier.
Caps is able to get a kill back at the very end here. Nice play from him, realizing there's not a lot he can do. Auto attack combined with the ultimate to get a trade onto Maple, but still, the gold largely remains even, but you're getting to see the impact that Betty can have in these fights. Aja caught off on a side lane.
PSG might set up around the Baron for this. Azure will fall. Broken Blade does still have the TP, as does Caps, so PSG realize all you can get really is vision because you know you're overloading this side of the map. They're trying to delay Azure here so that they have better tempo on the resets. If they can delay him for long enough, maybe they can set up around the Baron themselves. Caps will take him in the end. Might actually just be a tier 2 push in the bot lane, but with the minion wave cleared out, it's a bit harder for G2 to do that. That's the first TP, there's the second. G2 are going for Baron.
You highlighted it perfectly, Medic. They wanted to delay the respawn of Aja as much as humanly possible. Now the double TP invested, they're going to push the mid wave in, and they're going to force PSG into a 4v5.
Weaver's Wall available, Chain of Corruption, Flash for Betty. He is having the tournament of his life for this PSG lineup. Against BLG, he was so consistently the carry. We saw the team damage in the last fight as well. Baron down to 6,000. Junja trying to get in, has the flash, has the smite. Keep his verdict blocked as he dives onto the backline. Junja's off towards the side, he flashes in. The Baron down to 600, and Junja gets it! G2 unable to secure the objective, and will they be able to win the fight? Can PSG continue to advance? G2 already lost one. The Weaver's Wall on the backline will take out Caps as well, and now it's all on Hunt Summer to do everything he can. Maple flashing forward. Hunt Summer, can you dance around Maple well enough? Broken Blade will have the elastic slingshot. He'll jump in. It's a triple for Maple so far, holding the elastic slingshot from G2 will back away as he's rejoined the fight. Broken Blade force away. Hunt Summer has the flash, and in the end, it's a Baron for PSG in a 3-for-3 fight.
It's kind of a Hail Mary that G2 is able to win, even though Maple is able to take out Caps. On the flip side, they're able to take down some of the members, but they lost the Baron. It's PSG that picks it up. 4 members still alive. I think G2 could have also gone for the push on mid or try and force some cooldowns, leave it at that, but the Baron actually ends up going to PSG, meaning that they're the one that take or that end up with the advantage.
We need to keep our eyes on Mickey in the replay because he's going to be the factor that's supposed to try and keep Junja out of the pit. You can see him channeling the ultimate, only connects onto the Nautilus, who still finds a way in. Junja then goes over the wall to avoid the Keeper's Verdict. And then the smite comes through, an early smite from Yike is punished by Junja, and then immediately they turn their attention on the Caps. Good positioning from Betty as Mickey tries to do everything that he can to keep him out of the fight. Maple finds his way onto Caps to shut him down, but a nice ulti from Yike turns the fight back in the favor of G2. Ends up being in a 4 versus 5. A favorable fight for G2, but the Baron's still in favor of PSG.
And Drake up in 90 seconds time. It would be sold for PSG. 9-2 now for Maple. 2.5 items complete. He is absolutely ripping through this G2 lineup, especially with the Leandries, to get his way through those tanks.
One upside here for G2 is that there's not a lot of Baron buffs left because of the way the fight played out. I don't think Aji actually got it because he was still dead when the Baron fell, meaning that I'm pretty sure it's only Maple that is sitting on it right now. So you can't really rely on the side lane pressure the way that you normally can with the Baron, but it's still going to allow you to get a great tempo back in here. Dragon is going to spawn in about a minute, and PSG should be the favorites to take that. G2 is going to have to find an incredible team fight. I'm going to look towards Broken Blade in particular. Betty needs to be eliminated early in the fight, and he doesn't have his flash.
I think so many of these fights have just been very disjointed from G2. We think back to the first top lane fight where G2 was able to split the fight in their favor, but a lot of the fights we've seen have been on PSG's terms. They were the ones that were able to avoid a lot of the initial engage coming out from Yike. They then were able to find a pick onto Mickey. PSG have just been very patient in their approach to the fights, and now with control over mid and cleansing out of this vision, they're setting themselves up nicely for the fourth Dragon.
Caps spotted an award, BB2, seismic shove back. Caps might look for the backline. Maple, a key target as well, alongside Betty. Caps jumps across the wall. There's the depth charge. Keeper's verdict knocks out Maple, and now BB begins to party, bouncing in. Ginger locked into the wall, and it's all on Betty. Weaver's wall back in, separates the team. Elastic shot forward as Azure is caught all unawares by G2. They find 3, they're looking for more. As Caps dives in, he wants to make it 4. This Serap's enough to keep Maple alive for a second, but there's the 4th. Only Betty survives, and Caps is having none of that. Knocked back, boom, boom, boom. It's 5-0.
And a clean ace out of seemingly nowhere. PSG, they get the Baron, they get a good setup, but they overstep in the enemy jungle. They seem split on the call. Maple wasn't there when the fight started, their biggest damage dealer thus far.
G2 finally got the team fight that they were looking for. They're able to execute on the front to back. And when we get a look at the replay, that's exactly what they do. They don't do anything clever. They just hit the target in front of them. Initiation from Woody onto Broken Blade means that Caps now has a lot less to be afraid of. Arja is split off from the rest of the team behind the wall. And look at that, they just focus the Vi, focus the Nautilus. Maple gets knocked away by Mickey, once again having a fantastic performance on the Poppy. And Caps and Hans are left completely untouched to allow for the chase down of PSG.
The use of the seismic shove, the unraveled earth early by Maple, only onto Broken Blade, meant that G2 just had so much freedom to jump forward and jump forward and jump forward. Mickey knocking Maple out of the fight as well. And as much as, you know, we talk about Jinx as a reset champion, Viego a reset champion, Tristana's the quintessential reset champion. You get those kills, you jump forward, and Caps doing 8K in that last fight.
And Mickey, I think this Poppy game has been a bit more up and down, but that ultimate might be the difference maker, right? The fact that Maple isn't actually able, was sitting at that point at 9-2, and so good as well as one of the only members in the team is actually shredding tanks. And you saw the front line from G2, they just didn't take any damage because the Leandris and Crypt Bloom, Talia wasn't there.
Really importantly for PSG, though, it is only one Drake. We talked about how vital it can be to get onto Soul Point early. The Baron's up in 55 seconds. All their vision is set up around the Baron side. It's a roller coaster of not only gold, but emotions, I think, for a lot of people during this game. As we see G2 investing in bot side vision, they'll likely reset and then play up towards the top side to take control of that Baron pit once again.
It's a really interesting dynamic where it feels like a lot of the fights are being determined by the impact of the mid laners. The problem for Maple now is Caps is about to hit level 16. He is well and truly online, and in a battle of who can take out the enemy front line, I feel like that it's just slightly favored for Caps right now. Maple, though, still a huge threat. 9 kills, 3 items completed. He can't afford to be underestimated. And what we've seen is, as Chronicle was saying, this game is largely about execution of the team fights. Whoever can get that better start will ultimately be able to clean up. And so even though G2 find themselves with the gold lead for now, I wouldn't rest on your laurels because PSG, they're poised to find a good fight. And if they can, this game can quickly turn once again.
In the PSG versus BLG series, BLG, they took some liberties with some of the engages, but PSG was just sitting there patiently waiting. It was also with Aji on the Cassante, trying to look for the comeback team. If you're in a teamfight composition, you're sitting on Soul Point, and you're like, what, like 3K gold behind at 27 minutes? In the grand scheme of things, I don't think PSG is going to be too worried, but we do need to see them. I think the biggest changes in a lot of the fights have been, does Mickey knock away a couple of key targets? And in the last one, he was successful. In the Baron fight, wasn't able to. And that is going to be, I think, one of the big difference makers as we get here. And towards the Baron, I feel like either team can use Baron as a tool. Actually flipping it after the last play, I would shy away from.
Unless you're PSG, just take it, you know? Ginger can just jump across the wall and secure it. for G2. It looks like they're going to split the map a little bit. Caps is pushing in the bot lane. My expectation is here, G2 just want to start it and maybe get the TP out of Maple. Caps will continue to push in. They're just stepping. Who matches Caps in a side lane right now? Maple can clear the wave, but if there's a couple of minions there, Caps has so much free time with it. Junja's actually going towards the bottom side of the map, so the jungler not here. G2 won't be aware of that completely. Caps is backing. Junja's looking for that, but Maple's walking away. Does have that Weaver's Wall. Junja now in the mid lane, seen by G2, and they pull away from the Baron.
Patience was crucial here for G2, but ultimately they walk away with the objective. Junja being on the bot side of the map was a very dangerous position for PSG to find themselves in, but the good news is that he wasn't spotted. So G2, they back away from the Baron. They're happy enough with the tier 2. Caps, though, Bloodthirster, now completed, level 17. We think back to his game 1 versus T1, where he got the Tristana, a good early start, but then he started to falter in the side lane. This time, though, redeeming himself, finding good fights and good pressure on the side lane is very difficult for PSG to manage as the gold lead only grows for G2.
Ornament is done now for Aji. That's a big buy, but I would have loved a Frozen Heart. Feel like that item, especially into AA to carry comps, even after all the nerfs, still gets an insane amount of value.
Look again at the map. We see Broken Blade this time, pushing in the top lane, keeping these waves up as PSG is forced to overgroup. They do have control over the mid, but they don't use it to gain access into the bot river. Dragon spawning soon, but there's very little vision control from PSG to actually set up for the objective. Meanwhile, that top wave is just bleeding into the tower.
Knight just trying to trade here. Flash, Steadfast Presence, stop the bolt breaker. Broken Blade coming in from the side as well. It's the 2 tanks. The G2 dive on. They all dodge the Chain of Corruption. And a great Keeper's Verdict will knock Woody out of the fight. Azure pulls Yike across the wall, but the chase continues as Caps begins to rain hell. A double for him. Stretching strike brings 2 in. And Caps is ready. Put him in the bouncy castle. It's a triple for Caps. He's going to make it 4. A quadra. Can Caps cement himself on this series with a penta? He needs one more. Maple won't give it to him. Pentas are earned, not given, but G2 win the fight.
And the penta might be denied, but I don't think the Baron is going to be. As G2 again, this time Broken Blade on the flank. Started off again together with Yike and Junja, even with the Sterix, not tanky enough.
G2 just stopped overcomplicating the fight. In the early fights, they kept trying to threaten the backline, but in the last 2, they've just focused the front line. They've leveraged Poppy to knock a member out, create a numbers advantage, and look, this time the target is Vi. Not as tanky as the Cassante, but it doesn't matter. Maple isn't quite in position, and it just becomes a straight-up front-to-back fight. The Norlis gets knocked away, the utility is gone, Betty can do very little, as G2 just mow down the front line.
G2 though looking for catching the sideline here already. Maple's down. Junja trying to dance around it. Woody there as well. Azure going in. Hansama flashes away from the Pathmaker. Broken Blade on the backline. Junja still down to half HP, but Caps is ready to join the party. Plays out the minion wave. PSG lost 1. Looks like they were the ones initiating the play to dive in. Elastic slingshot into the knockback. Woody able to buff away with the Q. But Caps continues to chase. And all it takes is a couple of autos with a bomb on your head for Caps to take you out. Azure brings Broken Blade back. He has the cell division though. As Caps walks through the tower. It's another for Caps. He's legendary. Not only in the LEC, but here on the MSI stage.
G2 wipe PSG once again. They have the Nexus in their eyes and they're looking to take game 1.
All comes back to that fight at Dragon where G2, as we pointed out, had the realization, just hit the front line, hit whoever's available. We have enough damage, we can chew through them. And G2 take game number 1.
Patience, the name of the game in that game.
But also zero hesitation from Caps. This is the regular season form that we know Caps for. He walks away with 14 kills to his name in game 1, just short of a penta. G2, a bit of a sketchy start. PSG proving why they are so scary and why they were able to push BLG. Betty, once again, alongside Maple, proving what they can do in these team fights. But once G2 shifted gears, they were able to come out on top. But it just goes to show how close this series really can be.
Really can be. PSG showed us a lot of good things in that game. And you have to remember against BLG, they did go behind as well. And then they were able to fight back in the best of 5, even though they weren't quite able to make it in the end. We're going to We're going to do something, I'm sure. Let's head over to the analyst desk.